Alright, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today is a pretty exciting video because about a week ago I had posted this photo right here on my Instagram, and I asked you guys if you had any questions about photography, filmmaking, cameras, Zcam, Sony, whatever the case is. If you had any questions at all, to leave them on that photo on my Instagram, and I was gonna make a Q&A video, which is what we are doing here today. So I have 37 total comments on this photo, and not all of them are actually questions. Probably about like 25 of them are actual questions. So during this video, I will try to answer all of these questions as quickly as possible, so that way we're not sitting here for like an hour, because we all know that I tend to ramble on at times. But if you guys are not already, make sure you head over to my Instagram and follow me there, because I am on Instagram way more often than I'm here on YouTube. And for some reason, I have a really hard time keeping up with all of the comments on YouTube. I don't exactly know why, but I need to get a better workflow or system for answering comments on YouTube, because the two apps that I use to manage all the comments just aren't that good, I don't think. So I gotta look into that. But I'm on Instagram way more, so if you have any questions and you want to connect with me on a more personal level, make sure to follow me on Instagram and shoot me some DMs, because I answer pretty much everybody on Instagram. And yeah, that's like the best way to get in contact with me if you have any questions, or if you just want to chit chat, you know, and become friends. Alright, so before I jump into it, guys, this right here is the photo that I posted on Instagram. It's just another pic of my Zcam with the A7SIII 40mm anamorphic lens, and a lot of you guys actually had questions specific to that setup. So jumping right into it with the first question here from my man Josh Bernales. I'm sorry if I pronounce anybody's name wrong in this video. If I do, just call me out, because I'm really terrible with names. But anyway, the first question from Josh says, what's the equivalent focal length that lens gives you? Looks damn good. So when it comes to anamorphic focal lengths, it's actually kind of confusing, and I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I don't know how to do the math and determine what, you know, anamorphic focal lengths are the equivalent of, but I do know that there is some de-squeezing magic that happens to the ratio. And for example, the 40mm on the S6 is equivalent to about, I want to say like 50-ish millimeters, like a normal standard 50mm, but it has the compression of like a 65mm. And in case any of you are wondering, the Zcam S6, which is the camera that I own, has a super 35mm size sensor, and the A7SIII 40mm is actually a micro four thirds lens, but that lens can cover the entire sensor of super 35, which is why I use it on my S6. The next question from Yves. Do you adjust camera settings on the Zcam on the small HD monitor? How does the monitor work for focus adjustments? Keep up the great work. First of all, thank you so much. I will try to keep up the great work, but no, I cannot change the settings of my Zcam through the small HD monitor. Small HD does not offer any camera control for the Zcams. The only cameras that they offer control for, I believe, are ARRI and RED. But I have talked to the people over at Small HD, and I believe that sometime in the future, they will have monitors that can control more than just those cameras. So the next question from Nico Ford says, big debate, Final Cut Pro, Premiere, or Resolve? So for me personally, I've been editing in Final Cut Pro for the last like 5 years, because I just have a MacBook and Final Cut Pro works. And I also like that Final Cut Pro is a one-time payment of, I believe it's like $300. And I don't have anything against Premiere or Resolve or anything, but I don't know, that's just the program that I started in. It's the program that I'm comfortable in. I know pretty much almost like everything you can know about Final Cut Pro at this point, so I really don't want to switch to another system. I know a lot of people kind of talk shit about Final Cut, but it's come a long way over the past 5 years, and I'm happy with it. If I were to move to any other NLE, I would probably move to Resolve, just because it's a little bit more professional than both Final Cut and Premiere, and it has more control over color grading, and I think that's really important. So that's pretty cool. Joe Beck says, what a beaut. I don't know if you're talking about me or the camera, bro, but thanks. JPEG Johnny says, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? I bet a woodchuck would chuck a lot of wood if he could chuck wood. My man Joey Alford says, if you could only ever take pictures or videos again, which would it be? Man, this is actually a really good question. I like this one a lot. This one's tough, man. This one's tough. I really love taking pictures. I actually got into the whole photo and video thing by taking photos first. So at heart, I'm kind of a photographer first, and then I kind of got into the video side of things. But if I could only do one for the rest of my life, I would probably do video. I would take video forever because you can capture all of those moments, those raw moments between, you know, you and your friends or whatever, and you can relive them by playing them back and watching them, hearing the audio, and it just kind of immerses you more into it that way, and just kind of like kicks in the memories better. But yeah, I would definitely do video again because I could also just like pull freeze frames out of those video clips, Joey. So there you go, bro. Video only, and then just pull those clips out, post them to Instagram, okay, as pictures. All right, so next question from CR3T Zach. He says, camera settings for different types of footage, like settings for 6K and 4K kind of stuff. Codec frame rates, variable frame rate, shutter speed, all that good stuff. That's not really a question, I'm sure. I think he's just like suggesting what he wants to see me make videos of. So Zach, I will make videos about most of this stuff probably in the future, but to be honest, I don't really care too much about like the super technical specs of cameras and whatnot. Like if the camera's good and it works for me and it produces a beautiful image, then I'm good with it. I don't really care about all the specs and the 4K, 6K, 8K bullshit. Like if it's got a nice image and a good codec, then I'm pretty happy. All right, so the next question from John Verone, he asks, do you enjoy shooting with a big rig or do you often miss running light with a small mirrorless camera? What factors go into your decision making when picking between the Z-Cam versus Sony for a project you're working on? So if you guys don't know, I shoot on the Sony mirrorless system. I've been shooting Sony for the past like 4 or 5 years and I absolutely love it. About a year ago, I upgraded to the Z-Cam and I slowly started building my rig out to what it is now. And this is a really great question because I'm sure a lot of you guys are shooting on a mirrorless camera and you want to take that next step into something more cinema. And with all of these new cameras coming out like the Canon R5 and the Sony A7S3 and you have the Panasonic S1H, those 3 cameras right there are all mirrorless, but they have a really cinematic image to them, but they're still not like that proper cinema camera. Now, getting back to the question, do I ever miss running light with a small mirrorless camera? Of course I do. Like pretty much every single time I'm out shooting with the Z-Cam, I do a lot of shoots by myself on my own as like a one-man band. So it would be much easier for me to shoot on a Sony camera because I can use the autofocus to get shots if I need to throw the camera on a gimbal or something. And the overall camera size is just smaller, so it's easier to manipulate and get the shots that you need quicker without having to waste too much time. But at the same time, I really do love shooting on a bigger rig because it's heavier, so you get smoother handheld footage, and I absolutely love shooting handheld. Like, if I could shoot everything handheld for the rest of my life, I would in a heartbeat, man. It's just got such a good look to it. Another thing about shooting on a big rig is that I keep a top handle on my camera, and having a top handle is just like, I don't know, I can't picture shooting without a top handle. You know what I mean? Like ever since I've been shooting on a bigger rig, that top handle is just always there. My hand is always on it. And I love getting those like lower angle shots, like the hero type shots. And the top handle just makes that so much more easy. So much more easy. Just makes it so much easier for me to get those angles. He also asked what factors go into your decision making when picking between those 2 cameras. So honestly, the biggest factor about me picking which system I'm going to use, honestly, it depends on like the client's budget. If the client has a bigger budget and they're willing to pay me more money, I'm definitely gonna pull out the Z-Cam because it just creates a much more cinematic look. It's just more professional, and showing up on set with a big built out camera, it's just like the client sees that and they're like, okay, like this is why I'm paying this much money. And that's a really stupid reason to shoot on a bigger rig, but it's just like the sad truth in the industry, man. If you show up, like let's say we both book a job together and you show up with a little mirrorless camera and I show up with a big rig and we're charging the same amount of money, the client's gonna be like, I'm paying this guy the same amount of money as this guy and he has this huge professional camera. This doesn't make sense. But at the end of the day, that shouldn't be important, but it kind of is. And it's like really sad to say, but yeah, it really comes down to the client's budget. If they don't have that much money and it's a really like run and gun shoot kind of last minute type of thing, I often just go to my Sony because it's easy, it's reliable, I know how to use it like inside and out, and I can just bang out the content within, you know, a relatively quick turnaround time. And yeah, so I definitely use both cameras, and I don't really have like an opinion on one over the other. They're just two different tools and you gotta use them to your advantage. Mr. Focus says, would you recommend this camera for a beginner's cinema camera? 100% yes. I actually bought the original Zcam E2 as my first like intro to the cinema camera world, and ever since then I've just fallen in love with Zcam. I think they are doing amazing things. Their prices are all really affordable for us, you know, young filmmakers trying to up level our games. But yeah, I would definitely recommend the S6 as a beginner camera because it's very modular. You can really kit it out and build it exactly how you want, and they have a internal ND option that you can slot into the mount on the camera and actually have internal NDs in the Zcam, and that is like, if you have internal NDs, that just changes the entire game. It's so helpful. So yes, this is definitely a very good beginner cinema camera. Paula Chardy asks, love my small HD Paula Chardy asks, love my small HD 702 Touch. Got mine on my Ursa G2. Sick camera. How you liking it? Man, I love the small HD 702 Touch. I actually love all of small HD monitors. I'm sure you guys have heard me say this in a lot of my videos, but I think small HD has like the best monitors on the market. Their user interface is just super easy to understand and you can navigate them like super quick. So I love small HD monitors, and the 702 Touch is 1500 nits of brightness and I have no problems viewing it in pure daylight. So yeah, I really like it a lot. Eddie Cam says, can you control the camera with the monitor? I cannot. Garcore Media says, what are your personal thoughts of the ISO and low light performance of the E2 S6 in comparison with the Sony A7 III, which is a full frame sensor? Also, you have the Nitsy V-mount plate, but I am interested in the Tilta V-mount adapter plate or the FX Lion V-mount to L series adapter. Have you had any experience with them? Thanks and keep up the good work. My personal thoughts on the ISO and low light performance from the E2 S6 with the A7 III, I would say they're probably just about even. Maybe a slight advantage to the E2 S6 because it has a dual base ISO and it's cleaner at like 1600. But anything over that, like I can use my Sony A7 III up to, like I'm comfortable using it up to like 16,000, and I've shot my Zcam E2 S6 up to 20,000 too, and like they're both super clean and usable with a little bit of noise reduction in post. I think they definitely compete with each other for sure. He also says he's interested in the Tilta V-mount battery adapter and the FX Lion V-mount battery adapter for the Zcam. If you guys aren't familiar with this, it's just this little adapter that plugs right into the back of the Zcam into the NPF slot, and it just allows you to slap on a V-mount battery instead of using the NPF. Personally, I don't like the Tilta or the FX Lion adapter because it puts a lot of stress into the NPF mounts inside the camera, like the little prongs in the back of the camera, and I wouldn't feel safe putting a big fat V-mount battery on the back of that and just relying on the connection of the NPF plate to hold it secure. My Nitsy plate actually screws into 4 holes on the back of the camera, and it's just much more secure, and it doesn't put any stress on the NPF plate at all, and I can have an NPF battery in that battery slot, so that way there I can hot swap V-mounts. And yeah, I would definitely recommend getting the Nitsy for multiple reasons. Merker Visuals says, awesome rig mate, how do you properly expose when you do run and gun? Changing ISO/aperture, or are you using VND? And do you use a LUT monitoring exposure? Read in the Facebook group that I have to expose to the right, but would also like to hear your opinion on that since your work is lit. Thank you for the compliment saying that my work is lit. That is very nice of you. When I expose when I'm running and gunning, honestly, it all depends on the situation. If I want to get a shallow depth of field, I'm usually always using like an ND filter. If I'm shooting with Canon EF mount lenses, I usually have the internal ND slipped into the mount on my S6. But if I'm shooting on an anamorphic lens like the Vazen, I have to drop ND filters into my matte box. So it all depends, you know, on the situation, but mostly I try to keep my ISO at the native values. So the base ISO on the Zcam S6 is 400, and then the second base ISO is 1250. I try to keep them at that as much as I can. And then to adjust my exposure, I'm usually just dropping in and out NDs or changing the internal variable ND. Also, I'm dialing in my aperture in case I need to like go from f2 to f2.8 just to get a little bit less light in, something like that. But yeah, just don't overthink it, you know, like do what you gotta do to get the right exposure, and don't be afraid to bump up the ISO, especially on the Z-Cam, man. Those cameras are like insane when it comes to low light and stuff. Do I use a LUT for monitoring exposure? I do. I use a +1 exposure LUT on the S6. It's just one stop over, but it all depends on what Z-Cam you have. So if you have the E2 or the Micro Four Thirds sensor Z-Cams, then you have to overexpose by at least 2 stops and you'll get the cleanest image. If you have the S6, a lot of people say that overexposing by 1 stop gives you the cleanest image, but you can get away with 0 stops over. And if you have the F6, you can get away with exposing right at 0, honestly. But I think overexposing by 1 stop just cleans up the shadows a lot on both the S6 and the F6. Flyrack Official says, that combo looks effing amazing. Did you buy that lens? I did buy that lens. This is the second time I bought the lens because the first time I sold it like a jackass. Leon22 asks 2 questions. He says, any big differences between the S6 and the F6 besides sensor size? Not really, honestly. The dynamic range of the F6 is a little bit better, but it's honestly not that huge of a difference to me. He also asks, maybe 5 things you like/dislike about the camera would be nice to know. Man. All right, 5 things I like about the Z-Cam without talking for a million years. The first thing I like about the Z-Cam is the image. It's absolutely beautiful. The second thing I like about the Z-Cam is the form factor and the ability to rig it however you want. It's a little tiny cube and it's super easy to build it out however you want. Third thing I like about the Z-Cam is probably the price point. It's super affordable. The fourth thing I like about the Z-Cam is the dual base ISO system because, like I said, at lower light, shooting higher ISOs, you just get super clean images. And the fifth thing I like about the Z-Cam is probably the Facebook group, honestly. The Z-Cam team is always in the Facebook group answering questions and addressing issues, and it's just, there's no other company on the market doing what Z-Cam is doing. 5 things I dislike about it. Probably the button layout on the camera I don't think is that intuitive. You know, like the ergonomics probably could have been better, but they'll probably fix that with future versions of Z-Cam. The second thing I dislike about it is probably the menu system because it's not that easy to navigate through, but once you get used to it, you get used to it. You know what I mean? Like, just give it some time. I'm really like nitpicking here to find things I dislike, but the third thing I dislike about it is probably the fact that Z-Cam is just such a new company into this game, and it's kind of hard to buy into a company. You guys see that? There's a little bug flying around me. But it's kind of hard to like buy into a company that's so new because they just don't have that reputation yet. But from being in the Z-Cam group on Facebook, it's definitely changed my mindset when it comes to that for sure. The fourth thing I don't like about it, where am I at 4? The fourth thing I don't like about it would probably be the audio. Recording audio directly into the camera isn't that great, and Z-Cam has been constantly putting out firmware updates to try to fix this, and it has gotten much better, but yeah, it's not that good recording audio, and it's hard to like monitor the levels and adjust the levels quickly, so yeah, it's probably the only other thing I don't like. And the fifth thing is probably just the lack of ports on the camera. Like, I wish the camera had a full XLR input, you know, things like that. Like, I wish it had a bit more professional cinema qualities when it comes to the ports on the camera. But I mean, those really aren't like huge negatives. And for the price that you pay and the image that you actually get out of it, they're all like workable to work around. So I hope that answered that question. Yuso M. Jokinen. I hope I said your name right because that's a sick name. What matte box is that, and does it take more than one ND filter at a time? This is the Tilta MBT12 matte box, I believe, and it takes up to 3 filters. The Alpha Pixel wants to know if the S6 is a red Komodo competitor or not. And 100% it is, man. Like, 100% all day. Every camera on the market is a Komodo competitor at this point, like the A7S III, the R5, the S1H, all of these cameras that are cheaper than the Komodo, but have all of these like spec features and whatnot, like they're all gonna compete with the Komodo. At the end of the day, each camera is just a different kind of tool, and it's whatever tool that's gonna help you do your job better is the tool that you need to buy. So is the S6 gonna compete with the Komodo? 100%, 100%. Milan Sin Acento asks, do you use an adapter for the Vazen 40mm on the EF mount in the Zcam S6? No, you do not. There is no Micro Four Thirds to Canon EF adapters on the market. You cannot put an EF mount on the Vazen 40mm either. How I'm using it on my S6 is actually because Zcam allows you to change the mount on the S6. So I have a Micro Four Thirds mount that I just swap out on the S6. I take my EF mount off, I put the Micro Four Thirds mount on, and then I can mount Micro Four Thirds lenses onto the S6. Driven Films asks, aside from a camera, what do you feel is the #1 piece of gear a solo filmmaker should invest in? Wow, that's actually a really good question, and it's gonna be a really tough answer, but I think it really depends on that filmmaker and what they actually film, you know, what they do for work, what kind of content they create. And I personally think that you can't go wrong when it comes to investing into lenses. Lenses will last you a lifetime as long as you take care of them, and good lenses go a long, long way. So I would probably say lenses because they have a really good resale value down the line. But I don't know, if you shoot like a lot of interviews, stuff like this, maybe you want to invest in good lights, or maybe you want to invest in a good microphone. But for me, I think investing in lenses is a pretty safe play. Connor Dever asks, what is the cost of this fine looking rig? He's referring to the picture that was posted on Instagram, and I did the math out, and all in all, it's about a $10,000 setup with everything that I have on the rig in that picture. Nazgrip asked a question about the Zcam in low light. What's the highest ISO you can get without grain? Honestly, I don't know. I really don't know what's the highest ISO you can get without grain, because there's grain at every ISO. It's just finer at the lower ISOs, you know what I mean? But yeah, I answered this question earlier. I have no problems with shooting the Zcam up to like 20,000 ISO with a little bit of noise reduction in post. Looks pretty good. Cody Osborne asks, is that cable management clip you printed or bought somewhere? So the cable management clip that's on the side of the camera, the little red clip, that's actually a 3D printed piece that this guy from Europe sells. I met him in the group, the Zcam Facebook group that I talk so much about, and yeah, he sold me the design, and then I printed them myself. Well, my buddy printed them for me because I don't know how to do that stuff. But yeah, it's really helpful. And then the last question that nobody actually asked on this post, but I got like a bunch of DMs when the Sony A7S III was announced, and that is, am I selling my Zcam to move to the Sony A7S III? And the answer is no, I'm not, because I'm gonna have both cameras, okay? Like I said throughout this video at some points, cameras are just different tools, and I think that you need to have different tools in your bag, you know? Like, think about a carpenter. If you're building a house, you can't just build a house with a hammer. You need a bunch of different tools that are gonna help you get that job done and actually build that house. So for me, I shoot a lot of jobs for clients that require me to shoot on a small mirrorless body, and if I can get a really cinematic image out of the Sony A7S III in a really small form factor in a really quick time, then yeah, man, I'm gonna go with that camera 100% for some jobs. And then if some clients have a bigger budget that requires a more cinematic look and maybe anamorphic or whatever, then I'm gonna shoot on my Zcam. So yeah, I'm not really gonna sell my Zcam for the A7S III. I mean, unless the A7S III like absolutely blows it out of the water in image quality and stuff, then I'll have to think about it. But for now, no, I'm keeping both, and yeah, I'm happy with that decision. So don't compare cameras too much, guys. Just pick one, learn how to use it, and then go shoot. It's really that simple. But that's gonna wrap it up for this video. I hope that this wasn't too long, and I hope you guys actually enjoyed this, and hopefully you found some value in this, and maybe we can do this again sometime. But yeah, if you're not, make sure you're following me over on Instagram, and if you like this video, hit the thumbs up button because it really helps. And if you didn't like it, dislike it, I guess, whatever. It's not a big deal. Let me know why. Constructive criticism, man, it just helps the channel grow, helps me grow as a person. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this little Q&A talk, and catch you guys in the next one. Peace. If you are not already following me on Instagram, guys, make sure to head over to my Instagram. Holy shit, that just scared the shit out of me, dude. Come on, light stand. My gosh, dude. That just scared the shit out of me.